What's up, people of the world? It's the Big Heavy, and apologies for the audio and janky video, but we're going camping. What's up, people of the world? It is your friend in refrigeration, the Big Heavy here, and just got back from a 4-day camping trip, 4 days, 3 nights in the lovely White Lake State Park up here in New Hampshire. And wanted to give you a quick review of the Jackery 1000 paired with the Iceco VL60 Pro cooler that I have. And I'm a bottom line up front kind of guy, so I don't want to have you watch the whole entire video just to get to the conclusion. I'll give you that up front if you do want to kind of see the play-by-play and see some stuff I shot out in the field while we were camping with those two devices. I'll put that right after here, but bottom line up front, the Jackery was able to power the cooler throughout the whole 4-day adventure. I started probably Friday around 2-ish. We probably finished setting up camp and took the cooler out. It was running off the back of our minivan, hashtag minivan life. Little 12-volt back there, keeping things cool. I had plugged it in about 24 hours before our trip, put all the food in there, so let everything kind of get down to temp, which I think is always a good idea. And this morning when we finished packing up, or right before we put the cooler in the back of the van, as we were packing up, the Jackery was literally down to 1%. So my plan was to bring the Jackery 1000. I also have the 1500, and I have that large Bluetti 2000 amp hour device. I only brought the 1000 up here to New Hampshire with us. Figured I'd kind of go with the lightest, smallest unit, see if that would make it. I did bring one of Jackery's solar panels. It's I think they call it the Solar Saga 100. And my plan was to see if I could get through the whole camping weekend with those two. Again, made it through just by the hair of our chinny chin chin, and didn't get as much benefit from the solar as I had hoped. Mainly that was because we were in a pretty wooded site. There wasn't a lot of sun, and basically the last 24 hours it rained the entire time. So solar panel was inside for most of that period, wasn't getting any benefit out of it. But as you'll see in some of the entries from camp, I think the most I got at one point was 20 watts or so. The first day things seemed to be rocking and rolling. The panel essentially kept the Jackery at 100% for most of that day, and then kind of went downhill from there. The other big lesson out of this experiment was put the cooler into eco mode. That's blinding flash of the obvious for most of you. I'm here to do these reviews and look like a low-grade moron, so you don't have to. But I'd done some kind of bench testing with that cooler at home. It didn't seem to make much of a difference whether it was an eco or max power mode. The difference comes in about 5 minutes after it turns on. The power usage drops dramatically, which I think helped eke out a few extra watts and get us to day 4. So again, bit of a blinding flash of the obvious. I've never been a car camper really. I've never done kind of the overlanding thing. Most of my prior nights in a tent were backpacking, bike packing, all that sort of thing, and eating, powdery, sawdusty, dehydrated meals and things like that. So I can see the benefit why people enjoy the car camping scene, having essentially a portable refrigerator along with us and having access to fresh food, being able to cook things that were a little more interesting than mixing various powders and stuff together and creating some Western Siberia-like gruel for dinner every night is certainly not as nice as having a whole chest full of goodies and being able to create a legitimate meal. So without further ado, I would recommend these two products. If I had to do it over again, if I was starting from ground zero, a few comments. The Iceco cooler, I was very concerned about the size. The VL60 is pretty big, and I'll put a link to the review I did of that unit. The reason I went with that size was people kind of said that was about the right size for a family of 5 for a 4 to 5 day trip. I think that hit the nail right on the head, without getting really Tetrisy and trying to pack the cooler super dense. We got 4 days worth of food. We do have a family of 5. Some of our kids are still young, so I think if they were older and maybe eating a little bit more, that would be that 4 to 5 day mark for a family of 5, and that 60-liter cooler was spot on. The other nice thing about the VL60, we had a drink explode. I think I talk about that in the videos from camp. Kind of left a little layer of water down the bottom. Luckily it was just seltzer water. But the coolers, and I think most of them have this, essentially had a big wire basket that all the food was in, so it was very easy to lift that out. And then the VL60 also had a little drain plug in the bottom. The pro tip there was it's not screwing as I thought. It kind of pops out. So once I got my multi-tool and just popped that out with the pliers, was able to drain that, clean it up very easily, and then drop that basket with all the food back in. So VL60 worked great. The Jackery, I think that 1,000 amp hour was, probably, it was pushing it a little bit. If we had had either better light and been able to use the solar panel more effectively, or brought 2 panels, we would have been fine. If we would have bought a 1,500 or obviously a 2,000 amp hour battery pack, would have been fine even without using solar. The one thing I would do if I were to do this again, I think in any case, if I was planning on bringing that solar panel, I want to make an extension cable. The cables that are on those panels are pretty short. They use a proprietary connector on the end, so it essentially will only work with that Jackery 1000. The 1500 has a different input. The Bluetti has a different input. And there's all sorts of, I think, at least a half dozen different standards for solar cables. So what I'll do is make one long cable, have an interchangeable end on the solar panel side that right now is set up for the Jackery panels, and then an interchangeable end on the battery pack side where I can swap out, probably using an Anderson power pole connector with the Jackery 1000, 1500, and the Bluetti connector. So those were the changes I'd make. The other change I'd make, and this isn't available yet, but they do have essentially blankets that'll go over the coolers. They make them a little more efficient. They allow them to use a little less power to stay cold. And also, as I talked about in that initial review, the one thing I don't like about the Iceco is it's painted black, which looks super cool, it looks awesome, but if you're out in the sun it gets really hot and it kind of absorbs the solar energy, so having that little blanket to reduce energy usage I think would be good. But those things taken care of, if I was going to do another 4 or 5 day, I'd probably bring the 1500 for peace of mind. But I think if you already owned a 1000 or any kind of battery pack more than 1,000 amp hours is getting a little bit out of your price range. If you planned well, if you used the solar a little more effectively, if you had that long cable, I could have gotten the panel out of the trees and probably done a little better with my solar charging. That would have worked pretty well. Other than that, the only things I ran off the Jackery was I had that cooler plugged in the entire time, and we probably did 3 full iPhone charges. I had my phone on and off there 3 or 4 times. I think my wife went from 10% back to 100% once or twice. So pretty good device to have in camp. Kind of kept everything running. But again, that 1000 is sort of pushing that limit, especially if you had more adults, more phones, more devices, and that sort of thing. But overall, would rate it a success. You can feel free to watch and see those journals from the field. There's kind of the play-by-play, as well as a little bit of the drama as that battery started going down a little faster than I thought it would after the first day. But thumbs up for the Iceco, thumbs up for the Jackery, kind of thumb halfway on the solar. Great idea, just didn't quite pull it off based on environmental conditions. And I'm gonna go and check my garage full of wet camping gear and see how that's doing. And roll the journal. So I'm in the garage and we're just packed up, ready to get loaded up for a 4-day camping trip, 4 days, 3 nights in New Hampshire. And you may be able to hear in the background there. Got the Iceco 75 fridge all filled up, ready to go. Got the Jackery 1000 all charged up and ready to go. And I'm gonna do a bit of a field test. So bringing both these guys out. I've got one of the Jackery solar panels, and we're gonna see if that setup will last for the full camping trip. It's gonna be powering the cooler, it's gonna be charging some phones, doing some miscellaneous whatever headlamps, devices, etc. we need charged. We'll throw those on the Jackery, and we'll see if we can keep things powered for the 4 days. So let me show you our setup here. So there's our pile of miscellaneous camping, fishing stuff. We've got the Jackery 1000, again, all charged up. The reason I took the 1000 is we're not at our typical house. We're up in New Hampshire, so space in the car was at a bit of a premium, so I didn't bring the 1500 and didn't bring the captain of the universe with the Bluetti 2000. So this guy was kind of the smallest common denominator. We've got one of the Jackery panels, again, only brought one because of space constraints. And then we've got the Iceco. Right now it's plugged into the wall. It should be set at about 34 degrees. And one kind of pro tip I'll give you, here, I'll show you what's in here. So we've got 4 days of food for the family of 5. So all sorts of drinks, kind of prepared stuff. There's some eggs in there. There's some milk,
seltzers, all that stuff.
And the pro tip is, the way these refrigerators work, the more stuff you have inside them and the cooler it is, the easier it is for the fridge to actually keep your food cold. So what I did was, when we headed to the grocery store to kind of stock up yesterday, turned the fridge on, plugged it in when it was empty, let it kind of come down to temperature while we were at the store. And then once we got home, just kind of unloaded everything camping related from the trunk right into the cooler. And, you know, we spent some time during the evening getting the rest of our food prepped, you know, kind of pre-cooking stuff, you know, chopping some stuff, throwing that all in the cooler. But it basically had a good 10, 12 hours overnight to cool down all that food. And again, once that food is cool, when you're opening and closing it, when it gets hot during the day, it's a little easier for the cooler to keep up. So probably the last thing you want to do in terms of maximizing your battery life is kind of take the cooler to camp, throw all your food in there that's, you know, some of which might be warm, and then plug it into the battery, because then the cooler is going to have to run constantly to bring that temperature down. So this kind of gives us the maximal advantage. Everything in there should be cool, should be down in that 34-ish degree temperature at this point. And our minivan that we're taking out to camp has a 12-volt outlet in the back, so we'll plug the cooler into vehicle power.
All right, so we're locked and loaded and ready to go and hit the campground. We've got all manner of stuff in there, looking pretty good and full in the mighty minivan. And you can see, and I'll turn this around in a second, that the Iceco is connected to the minivan's 12-volt power, so that'll keep things nice and cool on our way to the campground. So it's a little bit hidden in here, but there's our 12-volt power. Unfortunately, this Iceco connector is not the greatest in the known universe, but we are getting power down there. We've managed to keep the vent holes relatively unobstructed, so we should be rocking and rolling and still have nice cool food when we get to camp in about 50 minutes.
All right, so we're all set up at camp. You can see just over my shoulder is the solar panel connected to the Jackery 1000. And what's pretty cool is it's, you know, it's 5:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon, so kind of declining sun. But this panel, even with the trees and the kind of partial shade that it's currently getting, is essentially running us at sort of net zero. So when the fridge kicks on, when the compressor activates, it pulls about 50 watts. Had my phone hooked up to it earlier, so it was pulling about 60 watts, which apparently even in this bad sun, the panel generates enough to keep the battery at 100. So we've been set up for a couple or 3 hours. Jackery's still at 100%, refrigerator's still running cool, so kind of a net zero, you know, off the grid type setup so far. So pretty cool, and we'll see how it does the night. Obviously there won't be the solar input, so we will have the power run down a bit. So until then, we'll keep on keeping on. It's the end of the day. It's 6 o'clock. Got some chili mac cooking on the old gas powered Coleman here, but amazingly the Jackery is still 100%. You can see there's about a 54 watt draw. That's with the fridge running right along. And every now and then, you know, even though it's end of the day and there's our solar panel, you can see it's just getting a little bit of sun. It'll show a watt or two of input on the Jackery. So I assume that's just kind of keeping things topped up. Kind of see the sun through the trees. So, you know, pretty low angle, definitely end of the day kind of action, but it seems to be just enough to give the Jackery a little boost up whenever he needs it. I topped off my phone, so it's so far pretty cool. This is essentially a zero energy campsite.
Good morning, good people of the world. It's 8 a.m. Had a decent night's sleep, and the fridge was cruising along all night. Didn't have anything else really plugged into it. When I pulled it off in the last update, the battery is at 100%. Right now, it's at 78%. So I just set up the solar panel. I'll go ahead and plug that in. The light's not great, kind of overcast, sort of a diffuse flat light today. So I'm not sure how much juice we'll get in there. So I plugged the panel in. You can see we're getting 2 to 5 watts. So not much. And, you know, obviously being on strip, the fridge is running right now. So we got that 50, 60 watt draw. but hopefully when the fridge takes a little break, that'll give us kind of a trickle charge, and hopefully the sun will obviously pick up a little later as well.
So we just got back from a fun day at the lake, and it's 4:42, so it's been a good 24, 30 hours since we took the Jackery off of car power. It's currently got about 63% left, and a couple noteworthy items. First of all, so about 37% for a little over 24 hours of power use. The other noteworthy item, our campsite's great for being a human, and that it's pretty cool, it's pretty shady, not a lot of direct sun. Not great for a solar panel. So the most I've seen coming off this panel, which again, on a good, ideal conditions, panel in the direct sun, I've seen 119, 120 watts come off it. Right now I'm getting 2-3 watts. I think the best I've seen today is 23, 24 watts, and I've had to kind of tweak it and move it around a little bit to capture the full sun as the sun goes down through the trees. Other noteworthy item, I had tested eco mode on Iceco when I first got it, and didn't seem to make a difference. It always seemed to pull 55, 56 watts. Being that the Jackery's kind of down a little bit more than I thought it'd be, and looks like we could theoretically run out of juice mid-Sunday. Figured I'd give eco mode a try. Again, whenever the Iceco kicked on, it was pulling 56 watts, but then it kind of dropped down to, right now it's pulling 35 watts. So it does seem to make a difference. It does seem like it's maybe running a little longer, so I don't know how that'll balance out, but hopefully we'll consume a little bit less power over the next 24 hours and hopefully be able to get a little better sunny spot to get this guy in so he gets a little more power. But until then, we'll post an update tomorrow morning. All right, so we're on the morning of day 3. It's 11:07. Got through with breakfast and everything a little while ago. Went to bed, and Jackery is probably around 60%. The game changer tonight was turning it on to eco mode. As I mentioned yesterday, that's way more conservative with the power than I initially thought in my testing at home. And today we are at 40%. Super overcast today, so only getting 4 or 5 watts out of the solar, which is a little bit of a bummer, but I think we'll just barely make it through the day and into tomorrow. There's a lot of rain in the forecast, so maybe a little touchy with the lack of solar, but my backup plan is we'll throw the cooler in the back of the trusty minivan and we'll hook it up to 12 volts in there, and hopefully that'll keep the food from spoiling or anything like that. So far so good on getting the Jackery 1000 through 4 days of camping. I think and I'll do some closing thoughts, but the big decision is, do you bring a secondary solar panel or do you bring a bigger unit, and do some pros and cons of that. But so far it's been fairly impressive. I think if I had started in eco mode, probably would have made it through. We did 3 or 4 phone charges between my wife and my iPhone, so that took a little bit of juice, but so far so good. All right, last Jackery update. It's 10 p.m. Last night camping here. It's Saturday night. As you can hear, it's raining, so haven't had the solar panels out much today. Just kind of going by lamplight, and down to 25%, which, considering we started the day at 40-ish, should make things last through to the morning, which will be good. And we'll pack up and get the Iceco on vehicle power, and hopefully have made it through a full 4-day, 3-night camping trip, even without the power of solar today. I think I only had the panels out for probably a couple hours and never saw them putting out more than 6-8 watts, generally more like 1 to 2. So pretty good run from the Jackery 1000, and we will get a full or a final update tomorrow morning and a full recap after that. Morning, good people. As you can hear, it is still raining. It's a little after 7, and good news is we stayed dry, stayed warm. All the gear did a good job, including the Eureka, what's this thing called? Northern Breeze that I'm standing in. And then a little drippy drip through one of the Velcro seams up at the top. So all's well on that front. And the Jackery front, all is well also. It's got 2% left, so just barely eked out a Friday afternoon to Sunday morning camping trip. I think with having had it on eco the whole time and having gotten a little more solar, would have done fine. We probably had 3 or 4 iPhone charges in there. Had the cooler plugged in the whole time, keeping things cool, set to 36 degrees. So cooler was great having cold food. The Jackery was great, keeping things rolling. And I'll have some closing thoughts once everything's back and unpacked and hung out to dry. Till then, time to have a little fun in the rain and get things disassembled.